Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another session of the Symbiosis Weekend Sharing Sessions. Today we have Young Hei here to share with us her process of flourishing with a pointed pen. So take it away, Young Hei.
Okay, hi guys. Thank you for joining me.
Mhm.
So today's session is just going to be a very casual time. You guys can utilize the chat box and then I'll be sure to try to actually, I don't know if I can actually see it, right? If I'm sharing something. So, but maybe Judith can help me with any questions that pop up.
Yes, you can.
But today I was just thinking like next week is Thanksgiving here. And so I was just kind of like sketching out some like pencil sketches for different phrases for Thanksgiving. And then I was just playing around with maybe some painting, but then I wasn't really happy with how this came out. So then I was thinking you guys can learn a beautiful watercolor from my friend Arlene, who will be doing a demo. And then I did some envelope, like if you wanted to write Happy Thanksgiving to people or just kind of play around with different paper. So I guess I'll first share. I do have some examples here. Can you guys see this?
Yes, we can. Yep.
Okay. So this is an example of like just some envelopes that how do I minimize? Okay, some envelopes that I've done in the past. I think this set is from 2020. You can actually find a demo like lesson on my YouTube channel for those flowers. But basically, I'm showing this because from a long time ago, I loved kind of like extending out the flourishes, but also creating kind of a banner form, like extension or adding like additional lines to the flourishes. So on the left side, when it says kindly delivered to, you notice that can you guys see my cursor here by any chance? My
Yes, we
mouse
can.
cursor?
We
Oh,
can.
okay. Oh, okay. So then this Y flourish here, I purposely did it this way because I wanted to add this bottom line here to kind of add like a banner look to it. So this is a fun way I like to kind of like add to my envelope addressing. So you can say, please deliver to, kindly deliver to, or just to. And then sometimes I'll do some painting or I can just add in some embellishment. On the right side here is more like an actual banner. So I'm actually going to demo some examples for you guys towards the end. So that's another way where you can just do that separately, like kind of apart from the letters. Let me see if I can go to the next. Can you guys see this? Okay, so this is just some recent lettering in Spencerian, but flourished. Again, you can see how, for me, I like to add in these additional strokes here, kind of like to make it look more cohesive, whether it be adding the year or location or just something that makes it a little bit more interesting. So like whether mixing it with numbers or doing it this like block letter style is something that I like to do. So just wanted to show you guys some example, maybe to give you guys some inspiration or things that you can try. Let's see. Here are some other examples. This left one was like a taped it on top of like a Christmas gift. So here I just kind of added like half of a banner on the right side, and on the bottom you can see again like this J flourish was going out this way, but I just added a parallel stroke on the bottom because I wanted to add in this text block lettering in between. And then the flourish off of this S, again, I'm like following along the same stroke, making sure that the spacing between the strokes are evenly spaced out so that I can kind of add in my year. So just giving you guys some ideas. And then on the right side, this is kind of like my to-go, like illustrative, like whether it be little flowers or leaves. Something I also like to do, adding in an extra like stroke here on top of this flourish off of this K so that you can kind of it can function as a banner. So let me see if I have another example. Oh, okay. The more example, I think this is the last one, but this is more of like a Christmas theme. So the top script here is copperplate. The bottom is Spencerian. Same thing with this one here on the right side. The top name is in copperplate. The bottom is in Spencerian. So these are the two scripts that I really love. And so this is how I usually use it together. I like to do like a top line, more emphasis using copperplate because it's more of like a shaded script. It's heavier, it's more kind of like it stands out. And then the Spencerian is very delicate and flowy. And so I like to use that kind of it like I feel like it complements the copperplate really well. And then the embellishments, all these little gems here that you see, I'll also show you guys. I have some here with me, but they're just like gem stickers that I get from Michael's or any craft store. Maybe you have accessible in your country. But they're very, very fun to just add on to these flourishes just to add a little pop of color. So this one is blue because I was writing this in blue metallic ink. This one is silver because I was writing in white. And it's more like festive for this contrast on the colored envelope. So I think that is it. I don't think I have any. Yeah, okay. So I hope that that kind of inspired you to see all the ways that you can add banners or kind of like add extra strokes to your flourishes so that you can like think of ways to add more illustration or add like a little like a header. So I'm gonna flip my camera now. Okay, here it is. Let me make sure. Okay, so today I just want to start with maybe flourishing like a thanks together first. And if you guys have any other questions, feel free to ask me in the chat box. Okay, so I am actually.
This is live, so. What's the matter? This is live, so be quiet.
Okay, I was like, I'm actually going to this is my guide sheet for the copperplate guide sheet. It's I actually like I think if you sign up for my email list, I send out a whole packet. You guys can get this, and I also give it out to my students. So this is 4/16 of an inch for the X height, and I also have printed out some Spencerian. But for the first demo, I do want to kind of go over different ways that you can flourish and how I like to flourish when I'm going through these letters. So I like to first use a pencil. So I'm using a Pentel Graph Gear 500 and 0.7. I like to first sketch out my flourish ideas with a pencil, paper, and always make sure to have eraser because the part of this process is trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. It's not to try to get it perfect the first time. Okay, so if you guys have taken my Fearless Flourishing course, you may have heard me say that flourishing is really an extension of your letter forms. So I always encourage my students to really focus on the beauty of the letter forms first before you can kind of like branch out from the letter forms to create these flourishes. So all of these letter forms are things that are really emphasized and I highly encourage to really have some sort of mastery, consistency in your letter forms first before you venture out into flourishing, just because, if you neglect the letter forms and you only do the flourishing, there's kind of like a priority should be given more to the basic forms first. But in terms of flourishing, I like to say it's like an icing on a cake because it's really makes the letter more elevated. And so with this T, the way I added an inner loop here for the flourish, I extended out this basic entrance stroke here so that it curves out to the left. And then I'm connecting the T to the H. And I'll show you guys why I do that, but also other options that you can do if you do have a T and an H together. because oftentimes students will ask, how do I combine the T to an H if the H has an ascending stem loop, and then the T, the top of it can kind of overlap with the strokes. And also talking about like what letters should I flourish, or what direction should I flourish is all part of the process. Okay, so let's just kind of go over some examples of TH combinations. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just lay out in pencil. Show this straight. Okay. So the T, this is a 55-degree slant because as we're doing the copper plate script for this one, we're going to go into the sand, add a pressure, and then kind of come out. So there should be a little triangle on the top and on the bottom here. Okay, and the basic letter form, it comes here to the baseline and it kind of stops at the comma dot. Can you guys see this okay with the lighting? Okay, and then you have your entrance here, your slanted and bit oval, and then kind of come up here to the top. So let me just decrease my exposure lighting. Okay, so there's your T. And then the H with the entrance stroke, I like to put it under the baseline just because it looks very cohesive together with the capital letter. I put down my base first, and then you have your compound curve. So here's your H. And then with the ascending stem loop, you can keep it basic, which I'll just do here just to demo it. Come back to the waistline. So let me go over this actually with a little bit darker pen so you guys can see. Okay, so here we're going into your slant line. And then it ends with a comma dot. Okay, and then you have your entrance stroke for your capital letter. Come up here. And then your H, I'm going to do an extended entrance stroke underneath the baseline, and then we'll just keep it basic for now, like this. Okay. So if you have an T with an H, like Thanksgiving, you just want to make sure that you're crossing this top of this T through the ascender stem loop so that there's enough of a white space showing at the top and the bottom. Because if we cross this like really close to the top, it creates a hot spot because there's so many strokes intersecting in the same area. And so in order to kind of open it up that space a little bit, you just want to be mindful of that. So whether it be making the T a little bit smaller and then making sure that this ascending stem loop goes above and beyond. But that's also another reason why you can do it like this, or when we're flourishing, you can definitely connect it like this. The most important thing for when you're going to use this technique is that you want to keep this shape here also in that oval format. Okay, so let's do that again. So if I were to connect it, this is how it would look. So let me just put in the shape of this down here. So here's my capital stem. And I'm going to leave this left side open so that you guys can see just the connection points. Okay, here's my entrance stroke. And then when I come up here, I really want to elongate the stroke so that it has a really nice oval shape before I bring it down. And again, this downstroke here is on that 55-degree slant. So here is your T. And the spacing here also is something that we want to be mindful of. So this shape right here is kind of like the horizontal oval shape. Okay, this is a really good shape that for you to kind of look for. This kind of implied oval shape is something that I'm always looking at because copperplate is based on that oval shape for the letter forms. And then the bottom for this capital stem loop. Now you have so many opportunities for capital letter to flourish. So when I'm looking at capital letters, I'm looking at the basic form. You can flourish off this point right here. You can flourish extended from this point over here, and you can always extend it from this end. So there's 3 areas to flourish off the letter T, and that's kind of what we did here. At the end of this T, we flourished it by connecting it to the stem loop of the H. Now, what can we do on this side? So this is where I like to use a pencil. So for here, you can keep it simple and just do maybe like a small loop at the baseline here. Okay, but if I do a very small kind of variation here, then I always make sure to kind of make this top part a little bit bigger flourish. So you can extend this out and maybe bring it out pretty big on the left side like this. If you want to even add like an inner loop here, you can do that. Make it smaller so that you kind of add in the smaller loop here, but you're always being mindful of the spacing in between those two strokes. If I wanted to really extend out from the bottom, let me show you what that looks like. So here I'm going to erase. There's actually an eraser that I really like, but I think I left it at home and I'm at my office right now, so I actually don't have it on me. Oh no, this one is kind of smudging. Okay. It's fine. Okay. So if I want to flourish off the bottom of this T, you can do a horizontal oval. So let's try that. So bringing it up and then maybe curling it in, kind of like a spiral. But again, remember, you see how we were talking about how to intersect lines. You can cross the bottom flourish with this entrance stroke as long as there is a space here so that it's not too close to the entrance stroke. Okay, so I can flourish the bottom like this. And even for the top part, you can, let me see. You can leave it like this, or what I did for the other one is I added a small loop here on the bottom and I brought it underneath the baseline because you have a lot of space below the baseline. Okay, and then what I did was on the top part, I just extended it out just slightly, just so there's some stroke on the left side of the letter. Okay, so that's something to just consider when you're flourishing is first start with the basic form, and from there, there's always going to be different points in which you can extend it out from the basic form. So for here, it's at the bottom, the entrance stroke, and at the exit, stroke at the end of the letter. So these are like either you pull it through the center stem loop or you can connect it to the H, just as long as you're making sure that this is going to be an oval shape that is horizontal and not super slanted, or small. I don't like having this ascending stem loop be small because then it's not proportional to the rest of the letters. I always make sure that if I'm connecting it, because there's already a big gap here, I want to make sure that the shape of this ascending stem loop is going to be big enough so that it looks like an H. Okay, then the rest of the letters, and let's write in our things. A, so here's our A. I'm going to do this all. Here is your N. Okay, and then with the K, every time there is any ascending stem loop or descending stem loop, it's a great way to add flourishes. So I definitely know I want to add in a flourish for the K because I have all the space up here. So what I do usually when I'm flourishing is I just put down the stem first. Okay, finish your letters here. And then I'm going to do my S. Okay. And then how I came to flourish the bottom part is because there's all the space down here. Even though we brought in the flourish for the T underneath the baseline, we don't have any descending stem loops, which is why I know for sure that I can add in an end flourish for the S. The S is very versatile because you can technically bring that flourish up to the top. So whether it be coming up like this, or I can change that direction and bring it to the bottom. And I chose to bring it to the bottom because there's nothing here on the bottom. So let's start with the K and then we'll move on to the end flourish. So with the K, so I'll retrace here like this. I'll add in the same kind of this oval shape at the top. And then I'm going to bring it back towards the left because there's all the space here on the left side. Then on this side for the end flourish, this is kind of a very basic end flourish where you do kind of a C curve finish. Okay, this is a lot of like simple flourishes you can add on to an end of a word. But this time, instead of just stopping it here, I actually extended it further by bringing it to the left and adding a kind of like a spiral and then a ribbon. So this part down here is like a ribbon, and this is more of like a spiral shape here. But every time we do a spiral shape, you really want to be mindful of your spacing between your strokes. So let me see if I can. So this is the red line here is my flourish. And if I know that my flourish is going this way, then I'm always going to make sure that I'm having enough space in between these two strokes. And then how I do the ribbon finish is you kind of make a small and you kind of tail off at the end and you lift up your pen. And I'll demo this using my pointed pen. And then this part here, we said we were going to retrace, keeping in mind that oval shape, bringing it back to the left side because I know that I want to do my left side because I know that this part here is going to already have a flourish from the S. So oftentimes the placement of the flourish, the direction of the flourish, it all depends on the letters that are surrounding your word. So that's why with flourishes, there's no like set rule in terms of where you should place it. It all depends on what you're working with. So here I'm going to go with this flourish that goes below the baseline because I have a lot of space to work with under the baseline, but I also want to make sure that I'm leaving enough space here between this flourish and also this entrance stroke because I don't want to become too close or barely touch it because then it's going to create another hot spot. Again, I'm extending off this entrance stroke with an oval shape in mind, and then I can kind of stop it right here. But I always also, another tip I want to share is when you're ending your flourish, every time we finish our stroke, I don't like to rush it. I always want to make sure that at the end of each of these flourishes, there's like a little embedded oval, because that really helps me to make sure that the end of my flourishes are also going to be very graceful. So not only do you want to envision this ovals everywhere in your flourishes here, but you also want to be mindful of these little ovals tucked in at your end of your strokes. Because sometimes if we just, let's say this is not curved in, but it's more straight, it doesn't finish off that implied oval shape. Because if you really look at this piece, the reason why it looks very graceful, the reason why it looks very balanced is because all of these shapes here, all of these flourishes, if I were to take my pencil, I can draw like so many ovals. There's an oval shape right here, right? There's an oval shape here. Okay, there's ovals here, there's ovals everywhere. And so if you have a good eye to really recognize these shapes, then as you write, you'll be able to know like how to create the strokes in a way that will look elegant. Um, oh wow, Dorothy, great job summarizing these points. I just noticed. So I hope that's been helpful just to kind of like see and watch the process. But another thing I wanted to say, so that's how I actually wrote this out. So first, I don't just write this out at the first go. I like to kind of think through the process and sketch it out with my pencil, make sure I know where I want to put my flourishes, and then I can just put it onto this paper. And how I did this was I put it over like any guide sheet, and then I have this laser level from Black & Decker. And then for me, I don't like to draw in all of my lines, but I'll basically shine the light across for where the baseline is because I'm like the worst at keeping my line straight for the baseline. And so as long as I can see my baseline here, I kind of eyeball the X height. And then as I have my sketch here, I'll be able to kind of transfer this design onto my finished piece. But going back to how I like to incorporate the block text letters with flourishes and also Spencerian with flourishes. Another thing that you can do here is whether you want to do, you can even do maybe like give things and do like a small block letters like this. I think I did write give things in my sketch here. Yeah. So I was thinking like, even along this flourish, I like to write in some like letters here just to kind of bring it together. And then this example, I added this stroke here at the bottom because I wanted to put in the year that I'm doing it. And then all of these elements here are just small little embellishments that you can add on to your flourishes. This is another example. The flourish off of this G, because I added in that extra loop here at the bottom, already created for me this banner for the 2025. Okay, so let me think. Actually, maybe do you guys
should we can um really pay attention, okay?
No, not yet. He's not yet. I'm still trying.
do you guys have
No, no.
do you guys have any questions for me so far?
There actually is one question from Arlene. How do you plan out where your flourishes will go without banging into a line above and or below in a composition, like your watercolor piece of Palm 23? Yeah, so she's talking about the composition, how you plan it so that it does not bump into a line above and below.
Oh, okay. Let me.
You can
I
answer
will.
that later, Young Hei. I just threw it there for later.
Oh, yeah. No, I just wish I had let me see if I have that photo, at least if I can show you like a snippet of the piece, then maybe I can kind of talk it through. Since you guys can see oh, I can show you this one then. Okay, let me open this and then I'll share. All right, let me see if I can.
But you were in the
Okay,
middle
so-
of doing something with your give, so you can do that later. I don't want to interrupt your flow.
Oh, no, it's okay. Can you guys see this?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So this is kind of the snapshot for the piece. And so what I did was the process for this also was sketching out the pencil onto this pencil sketch onto the copperplate graph pad. So the baseline for every single line is evenly spaced apart. And so what I do with the pencil is I make sure that, for example, do you see this prepare here? It says right here, you prepare a table. This second P here, I shortened the descending stem because I knew I was going to flourish for the T and the H. And if I were to flourish off of this P the same way I did with the first P, it would have overlapped, right? And so that's why the pencil sketch process is really important because it helps me to see what's above and below my letters so that I won't have that issue of overlapping or making the flourishes like compete for space. So down here for the presence and anointed, I made purposely this P flourish a little shorter to keep it on the left side because I really wanted to extend out the flourish for the T. And I knew I didn't have any other competition up here. And so once you map out your sketch, it's the same way. When I do my sketches, I don't actually draw in my flourishes. I'll keep all of the flourishes open and then I'll only put in the main letter forms. And then I'll add in the flourishes after I kind of see it all laid out on the paper.
So you draw little stumps, kind of where the ascender or descender would go,
Yeah.
and then you'll pull them in after.
Yeah, exactly. So then with the P, I'll just kind of put it down a little bit just so I know it's a P. And then, but the rest of them I kind of know because I know what the word is. So I'll know that like this overflow, I'll put a little like, at least I could put the stem for the L and then I can add in the flourish after.
Thank you. It's just, I knew that there's a lot of thinking in making it look like that. You make it look effortless, but it's not.
Yeah, I would say the sketching part takes hours because it really, I have to tweak it and make sure that I'm spending enough time until I'm happy with it. Because once you ink it, you can't erase it or go back. So that's why like the whole pencil sketch process is the longest, I would say, in designing any like composition or longer piece.
And we have a related question from Juan Luis, like when is the flourishing too much and how would you know?
I think this is more of like a personal thing because I do know that some people like to add in a lot of flourishes. I would say that's more of like a personal eye for mm, like for me personally, I don't like to flourish too much where it becomes illegible. But for some people, maybe they want to be more artistic with their lettering and they don't want their letters to be legible. It depends on what your goal is, I guess, as an artist and what you want to convey. Sometimes the flourishes can just be like a standalone design without the letters, and some people just do flourish strokes and not really off of letters. Um, my standard would be once it kind of affects the legibility or takes away from, the beauty of the letter forms, that's when I like to pull back. And I kind of tend to be a little more conservative with the flourishes and not go too crazy. Is it okay to space words a bit differently to accommodate? No. So actually, I always prioritize spacing before flourishes. Because if you, for example, in this particular one right here, um, I think for me, like the spacing is really important because it affects legibility. If the spacing between the letters become too wide or too small, then it really affects the overall balance of the a whole like piece. Um, and so, for example, for here, generally speaking, I do want to focus on having the standard spacing in between, whether it be in between the words or whether it be in between the letters. You want to really maintain even spacing first. And then I guess like sometimes if you want to do bigger flourishes, you can move it over a little bit. I was just thinking like I've seen situations where if someone writes their first name and last name, then they would have a really big space in between the first and last name because they wanted to add in more flourishes on the left side. But then it looked a little off because it felt like it was separate, not like together, not cohesive, if that makes sense. So for me, I really want to prioritize spacing before focusing on the flourishes. But again, it's a little flexible depending on um, how it looks at the end. So for example, this one, so this is my initial design where I just left the bottom stem basic, but then when I was writing it, I ended up deciding last minute to add like a loop. But you notice that because I didn't like think about that before I wrote it, it looks really squished right here, right? From this Y to, I kind of had to tuck this in higher. It wasn't really as thought out as I did with this initial sketch. So if I were to do this again, I would move it over just slightly a little bit, but don't be afraid to even also overlap your flourishes with your lowercase letters. As long as it's a hairline to hairline or shade to hairline, that's fine. Do you leave a line between each line? Yes. So going back to if I were to this is just like showing you guys something else, but if I were to do like a line difference here, depending on how my design, I want my design to be, the X height, the baseline might not be the same. So for my other piece with the Psalm 23, it was the same because I wanted it to look consistent. But sometimes if you're only working with, let's say like this, 2 or 3 lines, you might want to extend out your flourishes. If let's say this is like Spencerian and the bottom is written in a bigger X height. So sometimes like you may want to create more space for your flourishes so that you have more room to flourish, but also not space it too far apart so that it looks separate. And so I always have to think about how can I space it enough so that I give space for my flourishing, but also make this look like a phrase, not two separate words. So hopefully I accomplished it for this one right here, that it looks kind of like a one design piece. Okay, so let's go. Do you guys? Okay, so let's do. Maybe I'll just do one more demo before we do the banners. And then if you guys have any other questions, or if you have, so I kind of want to go through my process here for this one. Happy Thanksgiving. Oh, yay, Isabel, thank you. I actually didn't write this in until last minute because I initially only had thankful in, but then the spacing on top was too bare. And then because I had all these strokes on the bottom, I knew I needed to add in something on the top to make it more balanced. So literally like 10 minutes before the session began, I added in this word always. I was thinking about, should I say be thankful, always thankful? I don't know. I was thinking about different words. And so this was like a last minute add-on. But again, I added it because of the spacing, because there was such a lot of empty space up here. So if you're without this, it would look more bottom heavy. But adding this on kind of makes it look like this is all one piece and it kind of fits within this circle. So I'm always thinking about spacing, negative space, how to look balanced. And even with this S flourish here, it kind of opposites for this A, you know, how it looks like mirrored image for that, just so that like if this had no flourish and only had a flourish here, it would look really empty on this side. So that also is something I think about for flourishing, and also centering. So sometimes I'll add in a bigger flourish on the right side if, let's say, I'm a little bit off. And if this always was a more left aligned and I had a lot more space on the right side, I might choose a different flourish so that it looks center. So that's kind of like a tip for calligraphers. We are not machines, so sometimes we won't have things perfectly centered, but flourishes actually can help kind of trick people into thinking that we purposely wrote it that way. So I like to add certain elements to center it, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's go through Happy Thanksgiving, and then the last part of the session, I will demo these three banners. So I was thinking maybe I was trying to think of something to teach you guys so that you guys can actually do it this Christmas. So if you want to put this at the corner of an envelope and just write like, you know, please, whether it be please delivered to, or just their name or initials, I think it's a really fun way to add it into your envelopes. Okay, so let's do Happy Thanksgiving. I will first sketch it out here and show you guys my process. So I'm using, this is the copper plate graph pad. You can get this from John Neal Books or Paper and Ink Arts. I've been using this for over 10 years. I like to use this particular paper when I am actually working on composition, because this guide sheet that I created, this one has a little bit of spacing here in between each of the second descender lines, but I like this because I added in purposely the middle of the X height. I added in the dotted line for the first ascender line and first descender line. I have all the lines clearly marked out because I need these guidelines for when I'm practicing all the proportions and the letter forms. However, once I move into composition, this is going to be hard for me to use because I have all these like little spaces in between. And then also the spacing of these slant lines. So I actually like this particular graph pad for composition because each of these boxes are 1 inch. And then also there's no, each of these boxes are also evenly spaced out. So if I were to work on a piece, let's say 5 by 7, I can clearly, I just make little tick marks here. So I'll just do like little corners here. So 1 inch, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'll just mark off my ends like this. So if I wanted to do like 5 by 7, I can just count down now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I just always found this paper to be really useful, not for practicing because I don't have the clear guidelines. It's confusing for me to like remember it when I'm a beginner, but I really like using this paper for composition and sketches with my pencil. And then what I would do is put this on a light pad and put like a finished, kind of like a final paper on top. So any like light color paper will work. It won't work on, paper like this one because you can't see the sketch underneath it. So with this, it's a little bit more trickier. You would have to kind of like pencil in very lightly, maybe like the lines. But generally, most of my finished pieces have been on light paper, so I would use the sketch and then I can put my finished piece paper on top, and then using the light pad, it will shine the sketch through it. So that's what I did for my Psalm 23 piece. Okay, so let's go do the Happy Thanksgiving. Okay, so this one I'm going to do Spencerian style. So this will be my baseline. I have to mark it just so I see it. And I'm going to do 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. So this would be the top of my capital letter and maybe 2, that would be my X height. So you see this paper, I really have to mark it off before I begin, or else I kind of lose sight because it's hard for me to see it in here. So I'm going to do, this will be my whole height of my capital letter, and then this will be my X height here. Okay. So with the H, let's just begin. And again, I like using a pencil because you can always change it. And even though this is copperplate, I interchange it with Spencerian because they're very similar. With the 52 is Spencerian and 55 is copperplate. So, I mean, they do have a Spencerian one, but I just use this one. Okay, so here is my P. I just do the bottom stem because I'm not sure yet what we're gonna do for the flourishes. Here's my second P. My Y. I'm gonna leave that. And then let's go to T. I moved it over a little more this time because I do want to add in the flourish here at the bottom. Let's do this one. This is again kind of doing that spiral flourish. And then the top of the T, we're going to connect it like we did with the thanks. Okay. And then let's do the rest of the okay. Might run out of space actually. And I have 2 G's. So usually when I have 2 G's, I like to make one a little bit different. So I'll show you this G and then I'll put in an I, making sure my spacing is still even. N. And then this G, I'll make it the standard Spencerian G. Okay, and I'm going to leave that bottom because I'm going to flourish off of that. Okay, so I have my entire basic. I'll pull it out a little bit so you can see. So I like to kind of look at it like this. And I'm going to now tweak it. I'm going to add in flourishes. I'm going to kind of see the space around my letters to see what is going to work best. So I have a double P and a Y. So this is actually tricky because you have 3 letters with a descending stem loop. You have 2 ascending stem loops here. I'm kind of analyzing here before I begin. You have a K here, but you have nothing on this side in terms of descending stem loops. Then you have 2 G's, and I already kind of made it different because that's something I like to do is add variations if you have 2 of the same letter in the same word, just for visual interest. And then you only have one ascending stem loop on this side after this H is with this K. So actually you have a lot of space on top. You have these descending stem loops are going to take up the space down here, but you do have a lot of space here. And then we got to figure out what to do with the happy. So I usually like to start from the left to the right, kind of work my way through and see how this is going to play out. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to think about is I know I need to flourish off this Y here. And because thankfully there's nothing on this side, I can actually make this, and you know how with the basic form, it starts at a very like straight bottom like this. But when you're flourishing, you can kind of add in a little bit of a curve at the top. So again, just like it's the little details to make it more graceful. And then we're going to add in your descending stem loop. And you have so much space on this side, you can bring it in on the right. And you kind of cover this part of the T. Okay, you have a 2 double P. So what do I do when I have all this? So when I have 3 descending stem loops next to each other, I don't want to flourish off of 2 letters next to each other. If I flourish off the P and I'm already flourishing off the Y, there's just too much space here to work with. So I like to keep the middle letter basic, and I like to flourish off of this first one so that there's a space between the first and the third letter with that descending stem loop. So the basic P has a very straight bottom anyway. So I'm going to just keep it like that. And then with this particular P, I can then even cross it through that P. Okay, don't be afraid to intersect it when you're doing the flourishes. It's totally okay because it doesn't affect the legibility. This still looks like a PPY, and so as long as it doesn't affect the legibility, then it's totally fine. So that's probably what I'm gonna go with. And then on the top part, another thing that I like to do is if I'm flourishing off the bottom for the P, then on the top, I like to keep it simple, and I'm going to flourish off of this middle P. Does that make sense? So to recap, if I have 3 descending stem loop letters, I like to keep the middle one basic, and I'll flourish more off the first and the third. But depending on the flourishes, if I'm adding a flourish to the bottom of this P, I don't want to flourish off the top because there's just too much flourishes off of one letter. So I'll choose the letter that didn't have a flourish, which is this middle one, and I'll add in the ascending stem loop here, which for the P, you can add in the top loop, and you can flourish off of there and kind of bring it to the left side. And so that's how I chose how to flourish and which letters to flourish off of. Okay, so another thing actually I do want to point out is, do you see how this flourish off of this P is the same as this flourish off of this Y? I generally don't like to do 2 flourishes the same next to each other. So what we can do is either we can tuck this into the P, or let me think about this for a second, or you can maybe finish it like this. Okay. So again, this is something I'm just thinking about right now, sorry. So going back to what I just said. So this P flourish and this Y flourish is the same flourish. It's the same flourish in terms of extending it out and having that implied oval shape here. I don't personally like to use the same flourish next to each other because it looks too repetitive. So we're going to try to figure out what to do with one of the flourishes. It doesn't have to be completely different. It could just be a slight difference. Even if you kind of tuck it in like this, even if one of them kind of curves in a little bit more, that already looks a little different. So that's just another tip, is that if you are working with flourishes next to each other, try not to repeat the same flourish, and try to add in a little bit of like a different flourish for that particular letter. Okay, let's just leave it for now, and then we'll kind of come back to it. Okay, then we have the G. Let's move on to the G because we're doing the descendings. So this G is you do the oval and you do a slight curve out on the top. And then we're going to do a slanted line here and do your descending stem loop, come around. And then for this one, I have so much space here. And so I'm actually going to utilize that space because I'm going to add in my year. So I'm going to pull it in, like really dramatic flourish here, add a loop, and then a ribbon. And you kind of like pulls in the spacing on the side. And then the last part of this G here, I'm just going to add in that descending, and then this time I'm going to tuck in this into each other. So this particular flourish is different from this one because it's intersecting itself once here. Okay, and when you intersect itself for the flourish, you want to make sure that you're intersecting at nearly right angles. Okay, so that will be my last G here, and dot my I's, and I still have my K. So this K, I have a lot of space here. So one of the flourishes I like to use is I like to change direction of a flourish by adding your ascending stem loop here. And instead of stopping it going to the left here, I'm actually going to add a loop and then I'm going to bring it out to the other side, extend it out to the right. So adding a loop or a cusp will be a great technique for you to change direction of a flourish. So that's another technique that we talk about in my flourishing course. So all of these little techniques are helpful to just know so that when you're working with flourishes, you know how to pull from your toolbox and kind of really extend that out. I just lifted it a little bit because it was getting too close to this G. So I didn't want it to touch or be super close to the G. Okay, because again, I don't want to create any hot spot with my flourishes. Okay. Let's see. I don't know if I'm completely happy with this flourish, but I think it's fine. Okay. Do you guys have any questions for me so far?
Young has a question. As a left-hander, is there an order to your flourishing to avoid smearing?
Um, so usually for, I don't know if it's like a left-handed thing or right-handed thing, but generally because of my paper position, I angle my paper to the right 90 degrees. So I'm actually writing towards my body. And my wrist is always below the baseline like this. So I do not actually encounter any smearing issues because of my setup. If I were to do a different setup, like a 45 degree to the right, and then using a straight holder or some different setup, I might maybe have more problems with smearing. But I generally write from left to right. And just like you see here, I'll just after I map it out, I will go and flourish, add in the flourishes, either depending on the letters, I will either add it as I write it or I will add the flourish after writing the word.
Isabel has a question as well. The two ascender loop flourishes, the P and the H, would that be too similar?
P and the H?
Yeah, I think it's
Which one?
that P and the H for Thanksgiving, I think.
This H.
Mm.
Oh, okay. No, I don't think so because this P is like a standalone flourish here. It comes down, but this H is connected to the T. So when you're looking at it as a whole, you don't really see it being repeated the way we saw the P and the Y here. You see how this flourish here and the Y here was kind of like right next to each other. It looked very like similar, but this P and this H, I don't personally see it as like the same flourish. But again, if that's something that bothers you personally, then you can always either tuck this in, like maybe like putting in a loop like that, or kind of like playing around with flourish options for this P. You can make it a little bit different if you wish, but I personally probably would leave it just because it didn't really bother me in terms of similarity. Yeah, but there's no
Yeah.
like strict rule about that too. So if you don't like how it looks and you feel like it looks too similar to the H, then you can always alter it so that it looks more different, if that
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I was curious. It didn't look similar to me, and I just wondered why. Because you're right about the bottom ones, they looked similar, but those top ones didn't, and I can't quite analyze why that is, but it is very interesting. Yeah, it's probably the connection. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I would say it's probably because the T and the H is connected. It looks more fluid in one movement, whereas this P is a standalone flourish, so you kind of see it as like a separate piece. Whereas these two are standalone flourishes and they look really similar next to each other. And this is where in between, sometimes you don't even need to add another stroke to your flourish. You may have spacing in between these like we do here with the loops. So this is where I would write in your year.
Yeah,
And then,
I have a personal question as well, because you were speaking about Spencerian and copperplate flourishing, right? Are there are the flourishes for both interchangeable, or are there script specific flourishes that we should take note of, or are there in the first place?
I think some flourishes for Spencerian, the flourishing techniques are the same, and most of the flourishing for the lowercase letters are the same, but there are subtle differences between certain uppercase letters between copperplate and Spencerian. So, for example, like with the copperplate W, it's the basic letter form is like this. But the Spencerian W is like this. Right? So because the shape of the letter forms is different, and we talk about how flourishes is an extension of your basic letter forms, so that would be how it will look different. So, however, I have the freedom and I love using copperplate capital letters with Spencerian lowercase. I think they are interchangeable in that way, but in terms of how like the flourishes may look different. So for example, this can maybe lead to, so the flourish points would be here and it would be at the end. I will leave this part the same. But again, if we study copperplate, you'll know that there's so many different ways to even change out this entrance stroke. So even with this basic letter form, you can have a horizontal oval entrance stroke for your W, like this. You can add in this entrance stroke and then your compound curve for your W. Okay, so if you study like the basic form for copperplate, you can actually swap out some options for how you want to begin your letter forms. So from here, then you have more options for how you can flourish. So like for this one, you can obviously add in a loop here to flourish, just an entrance stroke. And for this exit stroke here, you can always extend that out further and tuck it in. And depending on what's next to it, you can even add a loop and extend it out even further, or you can bring it in here and tuck it in this way. Or even the this last part here, let's do the Spencerian. So this is the Spencerian W. Then sometimes,
Young-Hei, you're off screen.
oh, so sorry. You can extend that out and bring it in here, like through on the top part. And then for this part on the left side, then if I want to maintain the same basic entrance stroke here, you can just extend that out further and add a loop. But you notice that I'm keeping the structure for the letter forms the same, but I'm just tweaking the entrance and the exit stroke. Because for this particular letter, those are the 2 points in which you can tweak and change your letter forms to add in different flourishes. So in that sense, I do think that like it does change for Spencerian versus versus copper plate because certain letters will have a different entrance and exit point. So in that case, you have to think of how to add in the elements of flourishing, keeping in mind the oval shape as well as the, intersecting at nearly 90 angles and not intersecting shade to shade. Like all of those basic principles, as long as you have that, then you can play around with different options for how to flourish from your basic letter form. So that's a great question.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to banners. I'm so sorry, it's already 5. I did want to demo 3 banner options for you guys because I wanted to. Okay, so I'm going to use this and I'm going to use I didn't realize time was going to go by so quickly, but I'm using a walnut ink and I'm using my Leonard Principle EF pointed pen. I'll try to wrap this up hopefully in 5 minutes. But I did want to show you guys how I do these banners so that you guys can practice it at home and then also try to use it for your Christmas envelopes this year. Okay. So there's 3 different banners and let me start with the first banner. You're going to make a slight kind of like a S curve. And this one, usually with copper plate, I always have students make sure that your nib is running parallel to the slant line. When you're like drawing these things like banners, you don't have to be so strict with the position of your nib because you're really using it as a tool, not really for a script, but it's really for drawing purposes. So, okay. So the first banner is going to be, go like this. Kind of like an S curve like that. And we're going to do the same thing on the bottom, just giving a little space for your word. So you can add a shade. I added it more on the left side here, but if you want, you can position it like towards the middle. I don't think you can play around with what you like. Connect the 2 points like this. It's a very loose drawing. We don't have to be super, super exact. Okay, then from this top curve here on the right side. So this one we did a bottom kind of curve to the top. So you're going to do the same curvature parallel, and then we're connecting the 2 points. And then we're going to follow this curve out like this. So we're making a, what do you call this? Squiggly line, like an S curve out. And then we're going to add in our ends, pointed ends, like this. Come into your banner like that. You're going to connect now this point here to the main shape, just so you have that done. And we're going to add in small little lines to add in some shading. And then you can do this bottom part like on this way, but I like to flip my paper around sometimes. Sometimes I just like making this shape like this. So let me flip my paper. Add it and then add that little lines. Okay. So now we're going to flip it back. And then here you have your first banner. Okay, so you're adding a shade here, like a little line so that you can add in like kind of like 3D dimension. But you also can add in a little line here, like in varying sizes, a small, big, alternating. It doesn't have to be exact, but I'm just adding a little bit of lines here. And then you're going to add similar lines on this side. Okay, like that, just so it adds in like that dimension for that banner. If you want to, you can actually darken this part and go over the line. If you feel like it needs more kind of like emphasis, you can kind of go over the lines and do that. So that is the first design, and you can put in your lettering inside here. If you want to have this top part stick out a little bit more, you can also put in some lines on the corners here, going in like this. Like that. Okay, so this is a part where the banner goes kind of like dipping it under and then to the on top here on the left side. Let me show you guys just slight changes. If you do the same banner, but you're gonna do it going from top to bottom like this. It's the same thing, but we're gonna go in a different curvature. If you do it like this, then you'll have this side is going to have the banner coming out like this. And it's the same thing. We're going to add in those lines here. And then we'll have the top part here. So it's basically changing the direction of your banner. So this, the first one we did, you had it going up from the top and the bottom. This one, you're having it, the top part be on the left and the right side is going to be on the bottom. And that all depends on what kind of shape you make first. If you go from top to bottom curve, this is the banner you'll have. If you go from bottom to top curve, this is the banner you'll have. Sorry, Dorothy, is there someone after me? Or can I go for a couple more minutes?
Please go ahead.
Okay, as promised, I will wrap this up soon. Okay. So that will be the two similar but different banners. And then the third one, the third shape, really quick, because sometimes you may not want to have it floating, like alternating like this. If you want to do more of like a centered banner of your envelope piece and make that to be your, okay. Then you want to make it not a curvy S curve, but just a C curve. So then you go thin to thick to thin, then thin to thick to thin. So this is just one stroke going like this. And then we're going to connect the ends just like we did for the other one. And this time we're going to add in the extensions at the bottom. And same thing on this side. Okay, so this is more of like if you want that part to really pop out. Adding in the shade here again, adding in the lines so that this top part kind of comes out, and also the lines on the side. I find it to be nice to add to these banners. Okay, so those are your three pointed pen banner styles that you guys can play around with. And then as you do this, I think it'll be pretty for Christmas colors if you wanted to even use color pencils and make it really like bright, like maybe even color in the corners here. And then in the inside, you can write your letters or someone's name. So I don't know. I guess I'll write Nan's name since her name is nice and short, so I'll do it right here. So if I wanted to make a small name here, I'm just improvising, but this end I can go more. N. And then because we want to write in Dr. Nan, let me see, I'm going to extend this flourish out like this. If I zoom in here, it's so small, this lettering. Okay. So then I will probably extend that out I can probably intersect this too if I wanted to kind of cross it. I can just write, and it's very small. This is really small. Something like this. So you can kind of tuck in the title in between the flourish here. So if you want to do your lettering inside your banners, this could be a really great way. And then just to thank Dorothy and Judith, if you guys don't mind, I will write their names in here too for the other banners. So I will write Dorothy. I'll try to do, this one's a little like bigger, so I think I can do copper plate, like a really mini copper plate. Okay. This is actually pretty fun writing letters really small. I'm gonna T. Then my crossbar. This one is more like a Spencerian. You can disconnect it. Even if it's disconnected, you can still read it as a T. So I think that's fine. Or you can make the T a little bit taller, but I don't want to make it too tall. So I think I'll leave it like that. And then Judith, let me see if we can do it right here. So even as I am writing, I'm just putting down like for this TH, I don't know yet like what it's gonna look like, which is why I just kind of leave it like this, and then I can go back, retrace, and add in my flourishes. That. Okay, so that kind of wraps up my session. I hope you guys had fun watching the banners come to life. Let's see. So we went over kind of the flourishing tips, and then we did some banners, and then I think I showed you guys this piece too. Let me know if you have any last minute questions, and thank you so much for hanging with me, even though we went a little over time.
Thank you so much, Young Hei. Can you switch back to your normal screen?
So beautiful. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Like Randy said, you're an excellent teacher. Really,
Yes.
really excellent teacher.
Oh,
And it's such a joy to see you, right? It's always a joy.
So much control.
You make it look so easy.
Yes,
You can see what a
really.
master you are.
You
you guys don't
inspire me.
see
I
this.
need to get back to my Spencerian and copperplate roots. I've been painting and not writing, so now I'm inspired to pick up my pen again.
No, you guys don't see the sweat beads like all over my forehead right now.
They're glowing beautifully.
Does anybody want to share what you wrote or drew
Mm.
as you were writing along? You can hold it up to the camera. Oh,
Wow.
Wow.
nice.
Yeah. I cheated and did it in color pencil because I couldn't break out the ink in time.
Oh, pretty.
Oh, you guys are
Pretty.
actually following along.
Oh,
Oh,
Nice.
Mhm.
so pretty.
Thank you.
nice.
You're a great teacher, Young Hei.
Yeah. Anyone else was writing along?
And it was hard to write along, right? Like as you're trying to soak in the information too.
Yeah, it's true. Anyway, this I'm going to stop the recording here. It will be posted onto YouTube, so you can go back and watch it and write along. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Young Hei.
Thank you.